A woman you can lose simply by setting a basic human boundary is a man you never truly had.
Oh, man. That is just a phenomenal quote.
Right.
And what really strikes me about the essay we're exploring today, the Sovereign Matriarch, the Rise of the Independent Filipina, is that it takes that exact sentiment and pushes it so much further.
Yeah, it really does.
It forces us to ask, what happens when a woman fundamentally no longer fears losing a partner at all?
Exactly. I mean, what happens when a woman looks at a deeply inconsistent or frankly outright toxic relationship, looks at her child, looks at her own bank account, and realizes the math just does not add up?
Right. The benefits just aren't there.
Exactly. When she decides she is entirely capable of bootstrapping her own life without all that dead weight. So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are looking at a quiet, massive, and honestly awe-inspiring sociological revolution happening in the Philippines.
It is massive.
We are tracking how an entire demographic, we're talking millions of women, transformed themselves from this heavily stigmatized, marginalized group into a total powerhouse of financial independence.
And just to set the stakes for you listening, this goes way beyond simple relationship advice. We are talking about a fundamental structural restructuring of a nation's economy.
Yeah.
The traditional gender roles aren't just like shifting a little bit. They are being entirely dismantled by raw financial leverage.
So let's get right into the hard data, because you really cannot understand the cultural friction here without understanding the sheer scale of this shift. We're looking at consolidated data from the Philippine Statistics Authority and the World Health Organization.
The big numbers.
Yeah, and they estimate there are roughly 15 million solo parents in the Philippines today.
And here is the absolute hinge point of this entire phenomenon. 95% of those 15 million are women.
Wow.
That is over 14 million single mothers.
Over 14 million. I mean, that is not a fringe movement at all.
No, not even close.
That is an entire hidden economy. It's essentially a shadow nation within a nation, run entirely by solo CEOs who also happen to be full-time, hands-on caregivers. And the trend is actually accelerating, right?
It is, yeah.
The source data shows that 57.1% of all live births in the country are to unwed mothers.
Which is a staggering statistic, but we have to be incredibly careful here with how we interpret that.
Right. Let me play devil's advocate for a second, because when I hear 57.1% of births are to unwed mothers, my first instinct isn't necessarily, oh, female empowerment.
Sure.
The first instinct is that this points to a systemic crisis. Like, it sounds like a lack of reproductive health care, unplanned pregnancies, and just massive vulnerability, especially for young women.
So there is a massive difference between the 15 to 24-year-old bracket and the 25 to 45-year-old bracket. The first group, ages 15 to 24, is indeed what the essay calls the vulnerable bracket.
Right, so your instincts are correct there.
Yes, exactly. This group is heavily impacted by unplanned adolescent pregnancies. They suffer from severe educational disruption, and because they lack, professional experience, they're almost entirely financially dependent on their extended families.
So they have very little leverage. They're essentially trapped by their circumstances.
Exactly. But, and this is where it gets fascinating, the paradigm completely shifts when you look at the 25 to 45 age bracket.
The prime demographic.
Right. The source dubs them the prime matriarchs. This is the largest and most economically active segment of those 14 million women, and they are the engine of this revolution. We're talking corporate leaders, mixed income digital entrepreneurs, and crucially, BPO professionals.
Oh, let's clarify that. For anyone listening who might be outside of the region, BPO stands for Business Process Outsourcing. Basically, it's the massive booming industry of call centers, virtual assistants, and remote tech support that international companies outsource to the Philippines.
Right. And you really have to understand the specific mechanism of how the BPO and the global gig economy changed the power dynamics here. Historically, a woman working a local retail or administrative job might make the equivalent of like 10 or 15 US dollars a day.
Gosh, which barely covers survival.
Exactly. But with the rise of the global gig economy, she could work a graveyard shift from her laptop at home for a company in New York or London. She is suddenly earning in US dollars or euros while living in a peso economy.
Oh, the wage arbitrage.
Precisely. The wage arbitrage is the exact mechanism that buys her freedom. She's no longer making survival wages. She's making professional global wages.
Right.
She can pay her own rent. She can afford private school tuitions for her child. She can buy her own groceries without anyone's help.
Okay, so she has totally solved the survival problem. But this leads me to a massive contradiction in the source material. If millions of these 25 to 45-year-old women are financially thriving, if they are the primary breadwinners, the ones keeping the lights on and the economy moving, why does society still treat them as a cautionary tale?
A great question.
Right. If they hold all the economic cards, why on earth are they treated like second-class citizens?
Because culture always lags behind economics.
Yeah.
Always. And in this case, the cultural friction is amplified by intense legal and religious structures.
Yeah.
You have to remember that the Philippines is a predominantly Catholic country.
Yes, that's huge.
And it remains the only country in the world, aside from the Vatican, where divorce is completely illegal.
Which, wait, that feels like a detail we gloss over way too quickly. If divorce is illegal, how does a woman leave a toxic marriage?
In a practical legal sense, it is an absolute nightmare. The only option is an annulment. But we aren't just talking about, signing some papers at the courthouse.
Right. It's not a quick fix.
Not at all. An annulment in the Philippines is an agonizing, combative legal process. It requires psychological evaluations, court hearings to prove the marriage was fundamentally void from the start. And the kicker, it can cost anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 US.
Are you kidding? $8,000 in a country where the average monthly salary for a massive portion of the population is just a few $100s.
Exactly. The legal structure itself is an economic trap. It is prohibitively expensive for the average person because the state and the religious framework heavily weaponize the traditional nuclear family. Falling outside of that structure, even for your own physical or emotional safety, is processed by society as a massive moral failure.
Wow. And this brings us to this incredibly loaded cultural concept the essay dives into, tiis, T-I-I-S.
Yes, tiis.
It translates to silent suffering endurance. It is this deeply ingrained societal expectation that a broken home is the ultimate tragedy. So a woman is expected to endure literally anything, infidelity, emotional abuse, absolute financial neglect from her partner, just to maintain the illusion of a complete family picture.
Right. Tiis is framed as this holy virtue. The mother who suffers in silence for her children is glorified. But the modern independent Filipina looks at that and asks a very dangerous question. Who does my suffering actually benefit?
Certainly not her, and honestly not her kids either. They're just watching their mother be disrespected day in and day out.
Right. And when a woman refuses to be a martyr, society punishes her with localized stigma. The essay details the neighborhood gossip, the chismis.
Ah, the gossip.
Yeah, they reduce a woman's incredibly complex, resilient survival story into a crude punchline. They whisper that she was nanulang.
Which means she just got knocked up.
Right.
Reducing her entire life and all her hard work to a careless accident.
Exactly. Or they label her as a barden, which is the localized pronunciation of burden. They frame her as a financial liability to the community.
Which is wildly ironic, calling the woman who is literally funding her household via global remote work a financial burden to society. I mean, that just shows how desperate the old culture is to keep women in their place.
It is total projection. The culture assumes that because she doesn't have a man, she simply must be destitute. And this bleeds heavily into the local dating dynamics too. There is a phenomenon the source highlights called the extended family veto.
Oh, this part fascinated me. Please break down how this veto works.
So imagine a local man starts dating one of these financially independent single mothers. He might be perfectly happy.
Sure.
But eventually the whispers from his extended family begin. They ask him, "Bakit ka magpapakanan ng anak ng iba?" Meaning, why would you feed another man's child?
But the irony, the absolute screaming irony here is that she doesn't need him to buy the food. She's already buying the food.
Exactly. The family's veto is based on this chronic assumption of scarcity. In a developing economy, resources are traditionally tight, so taking on someone else's child was historically seen as a massive economic drain.
So they just assume she's desperate.
Right, if a family assumes she's a damsel in distress looking for a financial savior, they cannot compute that she is actually a self-funded sovereign entity.
She has completely rewritten the equation. And this is the pivot that I think is the absolute core of this deep dive. These women are navigating bureaucratic nightmares just to get a basic solo parent ID. They are dealing with ruthless neighborhood gossip. They are navigating a legal system that makes leaving a marriage a luxury expense.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle on every front.
But they are still choosing to do it. Why? Because they realize that managing a household alone with all the sheer exhaustion that brings, is vastly superior to the alternative.
It is the premium luxury of peace of mind.
Yes. They realize that staying with a lazy, toxic, or cheating partner is basically just raising an extra adult child. They are trading the illusion of a complete family for actual, tangible peace. And that requires an elite level of psychological fortitude.
It really does. Financial sovereignty killed the necessity of the traditional provider. For decades, women engaged in they endured the toxicity because they quite literally could not afford to put a roof over their children's heads without a husband.
Survival forced their hand.
Exactly. But once the gig economy and professional tracks gave them the ability to generate their own wealth, their tolerance for disrespect plummeted to absolute zero.
They stopped modeling silent suffering for their children.
They do. Instead of teaching their kids how to endure a toxic environment, they are modeling how to draw hard, non-negotiable boundaries. They are teaching their children what self-respect actually looks like in practice.
So if she has completely eliminated her financial need for a partner and she is hyper-protective of her peace, what is the incentive for her to ever date again? What happens when a man tries to enter the life of a woman who has already survived the storm and built her own empire entirely alone?
The dating dynamics don't just shift, they completely invert. The balance of power is entirely in her hands now.
Because she isn't looking for a rescue, she is looking for an intellectual and emotional peer. And the essay makes a really brilliant observation here about how the dating market reacts to this, specifically highlighting the contrast with Western or foreign suitors.
Yes, the source notes a very distinct shift in perception here. While local society might still be wrestling with the extended family veto and the stigma of a broken home, mature, culturally aware men, particularly from regions where solo parenting is statistically normalized, view her status through a completely different lens.
They don't look at a 35-year-old single mother and see baggage.
Not at all. They look at her track record and see a massive, undeniable green flag.
Walk us through the logic there, because to a lot of traditionalists, that sounds totally counterintuitive.
Well, think about what it actually takes for a woman in that 25 to 45 bracket to succeed in this environment. She is working a demanding job, often navigating intense time zone differences for international clients.
Right, the graveyard shifts.
Exactly. She is managing a household budget in a volatile economy. She is mitigating daily crises, and she is doing all the heavy emotional lifting of protecting a child's psychology, all without a safety net.
It's an absolute crucible.
Yes. She has been forged by immense pressure. So, for an emotionally mature man who is looking for a genuine life partner, what does that demonstrate? It proves she is incredibly competent. It proves profound loyalty, stamina, and crisis management skills. He knows that if life gets hard, if he loses a job, or if there is a health crisis, she isn't going to panic or crumble. She knows how to survive.
You know, I was thinking about this while going through the source material, and it honestly reminds me of the startup world.
How so?
Well, imagine a guy walking into a pitch meeting with a wildly successful startup founder. He walks into the boardroom thinking he's the big hero, arriving with seed money, ready to save the day and dictate all the terms. But he sits down and realizes the founder has already bootstrapped the company to profitability on her own.
I see where you're going.
Right. She doesn't need a seed money. The lights are on, the staff is paid, the product is shipping. If he wants a seat on her board, he can't just slide a check across the table and expect her to be grateful. He has to bring serious, highly strategic value to the table. He has to bring emotional intelligence, stability, and vision. He cannot just walk in with a flashy pitch deck and casual, half-hearted energy.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. The barrier to entry for her life is astronomically high. The essay actually uses a very specific phrase for this. It says her emotional real estate is expensive.
Her emotional real estate is expensive. Oh, I love that.
And rightfully so. If a man wants access to that real estate, he cannot bring excuses. He can't say he's, too busy with his career to communicate, because she is also balancing a career and a child. He cannot bring inconsistency or drama. The baseline expectation, the absolute floor, is the peace she has already established on her own.
If he isn't actively elevating the empire she already built, she will just calmly show him the door. She does not have the bandwidth to raise another adult. She needs a fully formed partner.
Which really brings us back to the demographic data we started with. This is why the third bracket the source mentions, the women 46 and older, whose children are mostly grown, are so interesting. They have completely exited the traditional dating market's panic over finding a provider.
Because they've been providing for themselves for decades.
Exactly. They are strictly looking for genuine emotional companionship. The financial desperation has been surgically removed from the dating equation for them.
It really makes you step back and look at how society fundamentally values people. We took a demographic, millions of single mothers, that historically faced intense pity, marginalization, and the cruelest kinds of neighborhood gossip, and we are watching them in real time leverage a new global economy to force society to recognize their premium value.
They took what a rigid traditional culture labeled as a liability, and through sheer grit, wage arbitrage, and an absolute refusal to endure toxic environments, transformed it into a symbol of high-value resilience.
So, to you, listening right now, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We went from the sheer scale of 14 million Filipina single mothers to the agonizing structural traps of a country without divorce. We explored how the modern gig economy provided the exact wage arbitrage needed to buy freedom. And we saw how that financial sovereignty completely inverted the dating market, turning supposed baggage into the ultimate green flag for a mature partner.
The through line here is the rejection of silent suffering. It is the realization that endurance is only a virtue if it serves a worthwhile purpose.
Exactly. I want you to remember this deep dive the next time you find yourself weighing your own peace of mind against someone else's disrespect. Whether you are navigating a romantic relationship, a difficult friendship, or even a toxic workplace, know your worth. Protect your peace. And remember that true, undeniable power isn't about controlling someone else. It is simply having the profound ability to walk away when the terms no longer serve you.
But, and this is a big but, if we zoom out and look at the global horizon, this massive cultural shift in the Philippines leaves us with a truly fascinating question about the future.
Oh, what's the thread you're pulling on there?
Think about the core mechanism of this entire revolution. Financial independence is the ultimate catalyst that allows these women to reject toxic relationships and confidently choose solo parenthood. The ability to earn global wages from a laptop basically broke the necessity of the traditional nuclear family.
Okay, yeah, I'm tracking.
So as remote work, the gig economy and digital entrepreneurship continue to decentralize wealth globally, making it accessible to demographics that were previously locked out. What happens to traditional marriage structures over the next few decades?
Wow, that is a massive thought.
Right. Will solo parenting by choice transition from being a growing trend into becoming a dominant family model worldwide? If the fundamental financial need for marriage disappears completely, what does the institution of marriage even look like in 50 years?
That is something to seriously mull over. It changes the entire foundation of why human beings couple up in the first place. It stops being an economic survival strategy and becomes a pure, deliberate choice. And remember the quote we started with today. A woman you can lose simply by setting a basic human boundary is a man you never truly had. The woman who no longer fears losing a partner has already built her empire, and she alone holds the keys.
It's an incredible transformation.
Truly. Thank you for joining us as we unpacked the rise of the sovereign matriarch. Keep questioning the structures around you, and we will catch you on the next deep dive. Take care.